Let me move on by bringing you greetings from my hometown, Washington. Nobody said it better than President John Kennedy when he was talking about the nation's capital a long time ago. He said it's the one city that's uniquely imbued with northern charm and southern efficiency. He said it over 40 years ago, and it's even more true today than it was when he was president. And you know, he did have a sense of humor, didn't he? And these are the best of times and the worst of times in the nation's capital. We are all, of course, very worried and very concerned, understandably, about the economy right now. But I can tell you that for those who worry about how much the government is spending, who worry about the size of the federal budget deficit, there's some good news, because by the time all of President Obama's appointees finish paying their back taxes, we're going to have a surplus. Would that it were so. Seriously, there is a lot of excitement still a month in over our new young president, and it is excitement in both political parties. Despite what you see and what you read about the partisanship that has persisted into this new administration, I can tell you when you pull aside Democrats and Republicans, they will tell you that they are excited about the page that has been turned in our country. The prospect of a fresh start for this country, even at this very challenging time, the prospect of a new outlook on so many issues, and we're already seeing that, and a new outlook on the rest of the world. And that's what I want to focus on this morning, or this afternoon, I should say, for just a few minutes, and then leave time for your questions. Because it was just a little over a month ago, January the 20th, that almost 2 million people, an unbelievable number, came together on the National Mall in Washington, crowded out there to watch the inauguration, to be part of history, which is how they put it. When any reporter or anybody else would ask them, why are you here? They would say, I wanted to be a part of this nation's history. They braved the bitter cold for hours. They put up with the crowds, with the security, which was extraordinary, with the inconvenience, and there wasn't a single arrest or disturbance of any kind. It was remarkable. People came from all over this country. They bundled up in coats and hats and gloves and layers, and they grinned and they cried. One of the most memorable, and I watched on the NewsHour that night. I couldn't be on the mall myself because I was in the studio interviewing historians as we covered live the inaugural ceremony. But one of the most memorable was a woman in her 60s who talked to my NewsHour colleague, Gwen Eiffel. And the woman told Gwen that she had traveled from Tulsa, and I guess my ears perked up because Tulsa's my birthplace. And she told Gwen it had taken her a few days to get to Washington by bus. And when Gwen caught up with her, she was crying so much she could barely speak. But she finally did pull herself together, and she said on camera, she said, you know, I have a boy, and because of today, he won't have to be a rap star or a basketball player to have a good life. And I am sure that those were the sentiments of so many on January the 20th, as Americans of all races and all creeds celebrated the huge barrier that came tumbling down when Barack Obama was sworn in as the 44th President of the United States, only 144 years after the end of slavery, and only 40 years after blacks were guaranteed the right to vote. I've been covering Washington for over 3 decades, and there's a tendency for us old-timers, and we do tend to hang around. We stay in Washington, we don't leave, for us to say we've seen it all, that we've been there and we've done that, or at the very least to be skeptical of all those who come up and say, well, this is some new phenomenon, you should look at this because things are going to be different this time. And what it reminds me of is that debate back during the early part of the campaign when there was some discussion out on the campaign trail, especially on the Republican side, but really among both political parties. But for a while it raged over the issue of immigration and English only in the public schools. And a lot of people said, well, this is the first time our country has really confronted this this debate. It's new for us. But I will tell you they are wrong, because back in the 1930s in the state of Texas, there was a woman running for governor. Her name was Ma Ferguson. She was the widow of Pa Ferguson, running on the plank of English only in the public schools. And wherever she went, all over the state of Texas, she argued with unassailable logic. I figured if English was good enough for Jesus Christ, it's good enough for Texas school children. So, despite what Ma Ferguson said, or maybe because of it, I confess that I have never seen anything quite like the beginning of this era, the Barack Obama era, even as it's only beginning. And, you know, President Obama is going to need all of the skills and the charm that he has displayed over the last couple of years, given the challenges that he faces. Frank Rich, yesterday, in fact, in the New York Times, wrote in a fairly downbeat piece, he wrote, and I jotted this down, he said, "Managing America's future shock," and he's talking about over the coming year, "will call for every last ounce of his brains, temperament, and oratorical gifts."